Donald Trump is preparing to ask for damages of trillions of dollars from China due to the coronavirus 5 years later. Notice Marias, professor of European Union institutions at the University of Crete, former member of European Parliament, member of Parliament of Crete, says, and suddenly 5 years after the start of COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization, WHO, remembered to ask Beijing to share the information it has so that the world can adequately prepare for and prevent future pandemics. And this was followed by the immediate response of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which pointed out that China has not only contributed the most to the investigation into the origin of COVID-19, but also responded to the WHO's call for data sharing, while meaningfully pointing out that it, quote, opposes the political manipulation of the whole matter, unquote. Despite this, the various American media did not miss the opportunity and with bold headlines presented the announcement of the WHO, while at the same time accusing the Chinese authorities of lack of transparency. So in this way, international public opinion has been psychologically prepared for the new U.S. anti-Chinese campaign in order to legitimize, without particular problems, not only the imminent declaration by Trump immediately after his assumption of the U.S. presidency on January 20th, 2025, of a new harsh Washington trade war against Beijing, with the imposition of new tariffs against the import of Chinese goods and services in the U.S., but also the escalation of diplomatic and military pressures against China, aimed at paying the U.S. tens of trillions of dollars in Chinese reparations due to the coronavirus pandemic that started in Wuhan, China. The above action of the WHO comes as a result of the strong criticism received by the organization from the final report of the investigative subcommittee of the U.S. House of Representatives in relation to COVID-19, in which the WHO is accused of an alleged pro-Chinese attitude in the entire handling of the coronavirus pandemic. And this is a report from December 12, 2024, pages 171 to 189 of the report. In the said report, which has 557 pages and was issued December 4th, 2024, the issue of the origin of COVID-19 is politicized, as it is argued that after a 2-year investigation into the outbreak pandemic, it turned out that the virus came from a Chinese laboratory in Wuhan. In fact, the said laboratory of the Wuhan Institute of Virology carried out the relevant research with U.S. federal funding, which came from the U.S. National Institute of Health, according to the report. Despite this, the report directly blames China for the outbreak of the pandemic due to coronavirus, while it then details the damage to the American economy, valued at several trillion dollars, with the apparent intention that said amount of damage be sought to paid by China as compensation. And after all, Trump himself, during his speech at the 75th UN General Assembly on September 22nd, 2020, had pointed out that China must be held accountable and responsible for the damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic that started in Wuhan. Taking advantage of the acquiescence of the imposition of sanctions against Russia by the US and the West in general, and the freezing of Russian state funds amounting to more than $300 billion, the writer says, I estimate that Trump will not hesitate to demand compensation from China due to coronavirus by unilaterally first offsetting part of the amount of the claimed U.S. compensation against the total amount of U.S. government bonds held by China, which according to official data in September of 2024 amounted to $772 billion. After all, we had already emphasized this since the beginning of April 2020 in the article where we argue that it is not excluded that the U.S. will find an opportunity and demand its compensation through the cancellation of its debts to China, since Beijing has US government bonds in its hands, which at the time amounted to $1.07 trillion, or 16% of the US public debt, concluding that in such a case, it is not excluded that this dispute will be resolved by force in the world's marble threshing floors. It therefore proves without any spin that, once again, the outbreak of the pandemic due to coronavirus is again being used for geopolitical purposes. So we'll see what happens with this issue. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.